Well, gentlemen, it's 7:30. I'd like to call the Town of Dartmouth Public Works Board to order. This is a virtual meeting by Zoom. The meeting is being recorded. So we'll start with a roll call of members. Mr. LaBelle,
Yeah,
Mr. Gagne,
Present.
Mr. Almy, myself, the chair is present, so we have a quorum. Our first order of business is to approve and accept warrants for bills payable period ending May 5/12/19 in the year 2025. Do I have a motion?
motion to accept the warrants as stipulated.
Motion by Mr. LaBelle. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gagne. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair votes aye. Item is passed. Next item is to approve and accept payrolls. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve and accept the payrolls for weeks ending April 26th, May 3rd, 10 and 17 of 2025.
Do I have a second? I'm sorry, motion by Mr. LaBelle. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gagne. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. LaBelle votes aye. Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Gagne votes yes. Chair votes yes. Item is approved. We have no meeting minutes from our last meeting. Tim, I presume that's because we still don't have an administrative assistant.
Absolutely. Yep,
All
that
right.
is correct. We're working on that.
All right, thank you. Next item is an executive session. At our last meeting, we had an executive discussion regarding a contract. My understanding that some discussion and progress has been made on that contract, and that the executive session may not be necessary. Tim, where are we on that?
I guess to kind of discuss any revisions, it'd be good to go into executive session.
Are you
One
comfortable?
last time.
All right. So with that, the board will consider going into executive session. Do I have a motion?
Motion to move to executive session.
I have a motion by Mr. LaBelle. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gagne. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. LaBelle votes aye. Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Gagne votes yes. Chair votes yes. We will go into executive session. All right, I'd like to reconvene the May 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Dartmouth Board of Public Works. We just held an executive session to discuss the contract between the Board of Public Works, the town, and the Director of Public Works. All right. So we'll now go to old business. Tim, you want to?
So, yeah, A is an update on our inflow and infiltration investigation program. So, working with Hazen and Sawyer and flow assessment. Flow assessment has completed the flow isolation program that we put in place, and currently Hazen and Sawyer is analyzing the data. Once they finish analyzing the data, they'll prepare a report that we'll meet and discuss and move on to schedule the next phase, which is the smoke testing in specific areas. So that's the update for that for now.
Tim, do you have a sense of when we would see their interim report?
I'm assuming sometime in June. we would see that. And I
Right.
know we're trying to move forward with the smoke testing as the weather gets drier. And there's less flow, so less snowwater flow. Yeah.
Tim, you did say that the areas that are gonna have the smoke testing, they'll give some that kind of notice.
Yes.
Folks in
Yeah.
those areas, because they're gonna see smoke coming out of their vents and other illegal illicit connections.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had public notification on the for the flow isolation section, and we'll do a little more for the smoke testing, because that affects individual homes more than the flow isolation does. So.
Any other questions on the I&I investigation?
No.
All right, hearing none. Item B, the comprehensive wastewater management plan update. Tim?
Okay, on May 5th, we met with Rob, Sandy, and we met with Andrea Langhauser, Chris Michaud, Mark Garrett, Chris Vitale, to discuss the CWMP RFP draft, as well as the additional comments that we had received from DEP and CZM, Coastal Zone Management. The meeting lasted about 2 hours. We had some great discussion, and we received a lot of great feedback from all the departments. So we're working on taking those comments and filling them in where they need to be. We only got about halfway through the RFP in those 2 hours, so we're looking to have one more meeting and discuss any other comments on the rest of the draft document before we can finalize it. We're hopeful that we can get this done by sometime in June.
Tim, since I believe we received written comments from the Conservation Commission
We did.
that included the entire proposed scope.
We did.
And then did we get comments for the entire document from the Waterways Commission?
I'm not sure if they were for the entire document, but I can double check with Andrea.
Because it seems to me those were the two other town departments that really had meaningful input. And if we have everything from those departments, then you may be able to finalize the scope without having another meeting.
Sure. I agree.
Right. Any other questions, board members?
Would it be appropriate to have the other board members receive some of this information so we could catch up on the discussion?
Absolutely.
Tim, if we're gonna have a meeting in a few weeks, I think it'd be good to circulate a draft scope that's been revised to include the Conservation Commission and Waterways Commission comments.
Yeah, I can send the comments separately in the draft scope that includes the comments. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to try and put together a revised draft scope so that we can the other board members can kind of see what's going on.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. If there are no other comments on the comprehensive wastewater management plan, then let's move to new business. A, Delano Apartments request. Tim, can you introduce this, please?
Yes, Delano Apartments is a proposed over 55, 89 unit apartment complex off of Dartmouth Street, located at the 696 Dartmouth Street Plaza. Attorney John Markey is here, and Pat Tricani to present their request for, I don't know if it's fee reduction or fee waivers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barber, and I want to especially thank the three board members for the chance on an early morning to take an extra 5 minutes out of your meeting. you know, in looking at people like, and I don't know Mr. Almy as well, but knowing Mike Gagne's background as a town leader and Ron LaBelle as a city leader, understanding the need for balancing planning, engineering, and technical issues along with financial issues, you know, Tim's got a pretty good set of general managers like Theo Epstein lined up there to give him some guidance. And I think what we're here to talk about is kind of the balance of planning and financial expectations for people who are coming to invest in the town. And you know, you all know, and I think Mike knows, the Carney family has been heavily investing in Dartmouth and in real estate and development for years. There are a number of years where I think they were the largest taxpayer in Dartmouth, and they have begun to develop all throughout the Northeast. And they have to make decisions. You know, where do we want to invest? And they invested in Amelia about 8 years ago, and it's turned out that aging in place for over 55s worked out well for the community. You're located near the library, you're located near the Council on Aging, you're located near business. And they said they began during the COVID period to look for another site that might suit them well. And I just want to quickly kind of walk through very short PowerPoint, if I could have a moment to share the screen, about 5 slides that will explain kind of what the ask is. Is that acceptable, Mr. Barber?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thanks. So let's see from Carson. So basically, what happened and it's set forth in the letter that you've received. When our clients first did all of their due diligence and were estimating what all of their soft costs, all of their fee costs would be, the number that they had for tie-in for the sewer service was $12.94 per unit, based upon the number of units that they were charged for when they did Amelia. Interestingly, you know, they had a similar issue with the building permit. At that time, it was $5.59 per unit. Now, when they're ultimately, after doing all the due diligence, after doing all the engineering, after doing all the permitting, when they went in, the cost of the building permit was more than 3 times what they had anticipated per unit, and the cost of the sewer service was more than 2 times. Now, I understand, and as I said from the beginning, you've got two roles. We need to make sure we have the planning, engineering, and technical things done, and we have to be able to pay for them. We cannot expect that forever you are going to keep your rates where they were. And in fact, it's my understanding those rates were kept at a flat rate for a long time, and there needed to be a substantial increase when you look at it in retrospect.
About 20
I think
years over.
The timing question that I wanted to make sure that you all understood and appreciated was, from my client's perspective, after doing due diligence in COVID, on August 30th of 2023, they signed a purchase and sales agreement to buy this property. And you see in September, they put down the $100,000 towards that property on the basis of a belief that all the costs that they were going to go through, including the sewer tie-in fees, would be things that were in play approximately at that time. My review, and I'm not certain of this, is that your change in the sewer connection fees occurred in January of 2024, which would have been about 5 months after they put $100,000 down, after they had done their due diligence. And Tim may recall this. I don't know. I mean, you're busy as hell, Tim, as am I. But I went back to my calendar. October 10th, 2023, Christian Farland and I sat in a meeting with every department head, Concom, Fire Department, District 3. Tim was there, building. And, you know, is there anything unusual? Here's your comments on the project. It was at that time never said, hey, by the way, as you're doing your due diligence, we've got something coming down the road that you would have to do it. I'm not expecting that Tim is a seer with a crystal ball, but the reality was neither were we. And now I may be wrong on this. I just went back to look at your meeting agendas as to when the fees were changed. But I'm trying to walk through the timeline. And had I gone in and found out that this change happened back in 2021, I would have to say we should have done the due diligence better and should have known. But when you put the dough down, what your reasonable investment-backed expectations are, the August rate, we would have paid the $12.94 per unit. And now in May of 25, when we're coming forward, we're at $2,600 per unit, which is more than twice. Ultimately, after I can answer any questions you have, we recognize we can't waive fees entirely. We recognize even we can't go back in time and get eggs for the price they were back in 2023. The accommodation we're asking for is to say, look, here's what we thought we were going to pay, $12.94. Here's what your current rate is, which is $26.35. If you add it together and divide by 2, it's $19.65 per unit. We figured we'll give you the extra $35 and round it up and just say $2,000 per unit, which would significantly help to show us as investors in the town that it's a town that says, when you have a compelling case that you made reasonable investment-backed expectations, we consider them. That being said, we have an obligation to the town, so we're not going to give away the store. And that in this particular instance, with this particular timeline, with somebody who's in town, who is developing a service that is beneficial for people who want to age in place over 55 and is investing substantially, we would like your consideration on this issue. There are a number of other technical issues which are beyond my expertise. I'm happy to try to get you answers to any of them. Some of them relate to the fact that if we go way back in time, there was concern, could we tie into Dartmouth? And in that time, we went and found permission to tie into New Bedford if we needed to. And we got a letter that went in. Subsequently, Tim indicated to us, we think we can manage the capacity, so let's tie into Dartmouth, which we're grateful for. And we think is also creates, in your role on the finance side, in addition to getting the tie-in fee, you will then have all of the monthly fees that you get, and unlike in Amelia, where a lot of that has to get passed through to New Bedford, if we stay here with 89 units, that's going to be an increased annuity, if you will, for the town of Dartmouth and for the Board of Public Works for years. So that's, I hope I wasn't too much longer than 5 minutes, but that was the quick presentation on the timeline, why we have this ask being made, and kind of with a target as to what we think would be fair and reasonable. But I'm happy to answer any questions. And with me, Patrick Carney Jr. is watching, but I will stop sharing now and listen to any questions you might have.
Board members, any questions on the presentation? Tim, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this?
I would. So just to clarify, when you did say that you got approval to tie into New Bedford, it's still tying into Dartmouth sewer collection system. It's just that section flows into the city of New Bedford. So it runs through a portion, a section of
Right.
of older sewer collection system back in Dartmouth. So
Right.
Secondly, I'd just like to share the fee breakdown just to kind of give an idea to the board and to everybody what we see here. You can see that, correct?
Yes.
Everybody see that? All right, so what we have, so I know you had requested this form, and it was sent out to you with a breakdown below here. So
Yep.
So how we calculate our fees is not by specifically unit when it comes to like an apartment building with 89 units. It's broken down per equivalent residential units, which is an average home with 3 bedrooms. So we take with that Title V flow of 330 gallons per day. So we divide the flow basically by 330 and get an equivalent residential unit. So that's how we do it. So it may not come out to 89 units, but it comes out to a breakdown that we calculate by the connection fee. So that connection fee, this is the water connection fee. And the only increase in the water connection fee was the additional number of residential units. So here we have the breakdown of the sewer connection fee, which was calculated 122 bedrooms by 110 gallons per day, 1,420 gallons per day. We gave credit, so we reduced the flow from the existing buildings that were on site. there was an existing retail and an existing resident, so we subtracted the 232 gallons per day from the retail, 4,200 gallons per day from the existing restaurant, which gave you a net of 8,988 gallons per day. So divided by 330, that gives you 27.2 equivalent residential units, and that's how that's calculated based on that, the $3,000 connection fee, as opposed to the 1,500 from back 8 years ago. In addition, there is an II fee, an infiltration fee, which was increased as well to $5 per gallon per day. So that flow of 89.88 is multiplied by that, and that gives you the $44,940. And then what didn't show on the main calculation sheet, and I know you have it broken down into your per unit cost for sewer connection. The board had approved a sewer mitigation fee for a lot of these large flow developments that are non-conforming, that the existing sewer infrastructure, treatment facility, pump stations was not originally designed for. So to mitigate that additional flow and work towards upgrading our infrastructure, that fee was voted at $12 per gallon per day, and that came out to $107,856. We did originally discuss the cost that, basically a cost for per gallon for building a treatment facility was between $10 and $12 per gallon. So I gave a calculation here of a reduction to a $10 per gallon per day, multiplied times the flow of 8,988 to equal 89,880, as opposed to 107,856.
Board members, any questions?
A question for Attorney Markey. Having worked with Claremont Corporation in the past, in the early 80s, relative to the construction of the Crossroads, and actually before that, Solomar 2. Each of those complexes had portions of the rental housing that were able to be counted towards the affordable housing plan and 10% quota that the Commonwealth imposes upon Massachusetts cities and towns. I'm wondering, on this particular project, how many of those units there are dedicated as affordable units and will be able to be counted towards the town's 10% requirement?
And my understanding is that when it's an over 55, unlike say the Crossroads that's open to anybody, it may be treated differently for the way the state would count things. So I don't want to speak to something I don't know enough about, but I can tell you this: unlike some of the others that say these are dedicated to lower income, there is nothing here that is going to be treated differently. Whether or not these smaller units that are designed for over 55s would count with a small one bedroom with the prices charged, I don't know the formula, so I don't want to speak to it. But the bottom line is, we have not filed something with the state to get extra money to say we're doing low income. I just don't know how that gets calculated on the 40B rule. So I don't want to speak to it if I don't know the answer.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing I wanted to just say to Mr. Barber, I want to thank him for, he had laid this out for us before, and we had no question that he calculated it correctly with what the current rules are, and we have no dispute about the water rate going up. It just turned out to be the sewer rate, which was the one that was very unexpected. But I thank him, and I get I get exactly what you guys are trying to balance. I appreciate it, and what we're trying to balance as well.
Hey, the other question or comment I would like to have Mr. Markey address is that I certainly understand to create an apartment unit of this size and value and number of units is extremely expensive. And the cash flow under a pro forma would not be until those units are filled to a certain point. The question would be, is if we stayed at the fee as calculated by Mr. Barber, would there be any consideration by your clients as to some kind of deferment of a portion of the fee to some part of a later date, so that the town would still get all their fee, but would help the cash flow of your client?
Right. And I appreciate that consideration. I think at this point, they do have all of these different costs and expenses that are getting wrapped into their financing. The bank isn't happy with some other costs that are going up, and they're trying to, basically talk with their contractors and keep rates as close as they can be to what the original bids were back when this project was started. But I don't think, candidly, that this is not a small development with a 2-family house where I have to sell it to be able to pay the tie-in fee. So I think the ask would be, would you give us a discount now? Letting us pay over 6 months or a year or 2 years wouldn't make enough of a difference that I want to put that as an ask at this point. If we can get it, some consideration, would be very grateful. If we can't, then you've made your decision, and we've had our day in the public forum, and we're grateful for it.
Tim,
Yes.
there are a number of developments that are being proposed that are similar to this in size and scope. Have any of them applied for permits and seen, this type of reaction to the cost?
We have, we had one, come in earlier that has been approved, that they agreed to pay the mitigation fee at $10 per gallon per day. They haven't applied for any other, I don't believe any water and sewer at this point, or they haven't started building that unit. We haven't, I don't believe we've received any other permit for any of the other large multi-unit developments other than that one.
Okay, because my fear is, the board approved this fee adjustment, based on, I was amazed that the rates hadn't gone up for as long as they we saw that. But when I initially saw this value, I was surprised. I almost thought something was wrong. It's a large, increase when you look at 89 units that's calculated. But we raised the rates, and expectedly so. They hadn't been raised in, I just don't want to say the wrong thing, but probably over a decade, if not longer. So I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Fair is fair, but when a board makes a decision, going back on that decision is going to be counterproductive, and it's also going to open up an avalanche of requests from everybody else.
I can also comment that, if, the water and sewer rates are, through an enterprise fund system. So basically, all the ratepayers throughout the community, they basically fund the department and all of our capital projects and the operational budget and any upgrades that are needed. So any waivers of fees basically puts that burden on the rest of the ratepayers. So I always say, if you're raising the rates, it's across the board. If you want to reduce rates, it'd be across the board. So I think you'd have to include all the ratepayers in a rate reduction to make it fair. Because if somebody came in and was having a hard time paying the connection fees for their single family home, it'd be a similar hardship for that one family you know, to pay those rates, and, you know, we want to make it fair for all of our ratepayers.
Tim, I've got a couple of questions. First of all, after we adjusted the rates, did we inform the select board?
I believe it was sent, I'm not 100% sure at the select board, but it would have been posted with, you know, the town clerk's office before it was in place.
And a question to either you or Mr. Markey. There's considerable construction activity on the site now. What other permits does the project hold?
Presently, it has, its foundation permit has been pulled, which has allowed all the site work to be done. The actual building permit, to my knowledge, for the construction beyond the foundation has not been pulled, but I'm not 100% in the loop because I'm not the project manager. I went into site plan review process. I've come to this board, so I can't speak to it, but I do know they pulled the foundation permit. And like I say, I'm not coming here to say they're going to walk away from the project, right? They're going to do this project in Dartmouth. And it's going to be a project which I think is good for the town, and it's going to be one which is going to increase your number of ratepayers for the next 25 years. What we're basically saying is, in this unique circumstance where you began a project, you met with the town, you put money down when the rates were at one rate. The idea that they're double, we would like some consideration for it. The Carneys now know if they go for a third over 55 somewhere else in Dartmouth, the new rates apply because they've been made public. Their only request and the justification is this is a gap period. So, but I appreciate the need for the balance.
Yeah, hi. This is Mike
I'm sorry,
Phillips.
could you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Mike Phillips. I'm the project manager for the Claremont Company for Delano. Now, we have like Mr. Marty said, we have a foundation permit, and we're applying now for a building permit, and our plans to get a full building permit are almost complete. This coming week, we plan to apply for the full building permit. We had a meeting with the building commissioner, Ken Kazarian, the architect, Chris Faleka, and myself this past week. And so we had a good meeting. It was a very good meeting, and we intend to bring everything we need for our full permit this week.
All right, is it normal practice for the company to make the kind of investment I see on site prior to having building permits and other important permits in hand?
Well, all we needed was a foundation permit. And because this whole thing was going on and on and on. See, the thing is, it isn't important when we start, it's when we deliver this to the Claremont Company. So, you know, the idea is we're trying to deliver this building in the summer of 26, because that's when you rent apartments. When you get in November, you don't rent any apartments until February. That's, have we done this before? Get a foundation permit? The answer is yes. I don't believe in Dartmouth, but other places we have.
All right, board members, any other questions?
Tim, when did we, or how did we actually inform, or did we inform the public in any way that these rates had been increased significantly the way they had been?
So we asked the town clerk to post it on her bulletin board, or their bulletin board, their office bulletin board, and then it gets posted on our website.
Okay.
And Ron, it was also, the adjustment was made in a notice public meeting.
It was. Yeah.
And I don't recall how we decided to put that item on the agenda, but you know, generally speaking, when we have an item like this, we discuss it prior in a prior meeting.
Mhm.
So that the board can see it coming. As I say, I don't know whether that happened in this particular instance.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I'm just, going back a little bit, to Attorney Markey's comments about the timeline for this. We raised the rates, they were advertised appropriately. They made an assumption that, the rates hadn't changed, uh, which is not a wise thing to do. Especially when you're looking at, an expense. I mean, that's, Claremont's, investing a lot of money here in the town. And it's certainly, I can appreciate that. But there's a level of due diligence that's required from engineers and contractors, to ensure that what they need as a value up front is accounted for.
Mr. Almy asked a question. It was, just because I did go through the board minutes, it was listed as new business on December 21st, 2023. Was the first time I saw the sewer tie-in, just so you know what the timing is. So we put the money down in August, had the meeting with the board group in October, and according to your December 21st, 2023, a couple months later, it was listed as new business, and then I think it was voted on in January.
Yeah,
all right, so there was at least a 30-day period where the item had been, if you will, noticed to the public. And that's from my perspective, I like the idea of giving as much notice as possible before the board takes substantial action.
Understood. And again, Mr. Almy, I'll just in response to that. No one's saying you shouldn't have raised the rates, and no one's saying that after a decade of doing it. The concept that I would have been this careful on my due diligence to look at your board agenda and say, oh, I want to come in now before you vote it and ask for an exception for something I've already signed a PNS for. I mean, maybe someone's way better a lawyer than me, but there's no way that would have been on my radar when I've got 100 other matters, as do the Carneys. We're not saying you didn't. Every saying if the Carneys buy another piece of property, we know this is the deal. We're just saying we had committed to another one and we're asking for some consideration. Not 100% consideration, some. But thank you. I just wanted to give you that answer about the exact dates.
All right. Any other questions from the board? Any other comments from the public? I see there are a few other people that have joined us.
This is Mike Phillips again, if I may speak for a comment.
Certainly,
Um,
please.
Sure, thank you. Our construction costs from Amelia has gone up around about 38%. We thought it was 35, but things creep up and it's 38% higher than Amelia. And we knew our rate was going to be more. And I'd ask you to consider if you would take what we paid at Amelia, add 38% for this project, would that be our rate? And it would be in line with our construction costs. Everything has gone up. Your costs, our costs, everything. Material has gone nuts. We bought a lot of material to avoid tariffs and just general increases, like every spring. Windows go up, doors go up, and so forth. Lumber has stayed pretty even to frame and lumber, which is only 12% of the project. So that's what I'd like to, that's what I'm asking for. You can see your way clear to do that on this project. That would help us. And, and we, like Mr. Markey said, going forth, new deals, we understand the new rate. Thank you.
Any other comments?
If I may, Chairman, in order, to look further into this, I would recommend, looking back at the rates, and like I said, to be fair, if a reduction is entertained, then we look at that across the board through all of, the sewer rate in general.
Yeah, Tim, I'm sensitive to the comments about future projects, and if there is any kind of fee adjustment here, what does that mean to future adjustments? We've got a substantial upgrade or replacement of our wastewater treatment facility looking at us, and upgrades to the sanitary sewer connection system. So I am sensitive to increasing construction costs. I certainly understand that. On the other hand, I suspect when we finally get to see the engineering on what our alternatives are for meeting future needs for wastewater treatment, we're going to see some surprises there. And I think we're all facing this together. All right, let's bring it back to the board. Board members, what is the pleasure of the board here? Do I have a motion?
There's a lot of different circumstances to this, and I'll go back to what I had originally said, Mr. Chairman, that I think the scope of this increase, at least in my own mind, wasn't considered when you're looking at someone who builds a home to someone who is building 89 homes. And when I first saw that number, I was amazed. I went, wow, did we make a mistake? Not in raising the rate, but was there a mistake made in this fee structure? Sat down, with Tim and went through it all. I'm reluctant to support this, but I think that Claremont makes a fair response to a bad situation. And the per unit cost of 2,600, reducing it to the 2,000 is, I think, something that I think, given what they're bringing back to the town, future revenues, sewer rates, water rates, taxes, costs aren't going down. I think I could support that.
If I may, one more comment. I would, like I said, I would entertain continuing this discussion with a look into the rate structure for next meeting, and have an earlier meeting than a month away, and look at the calculation of the rate structure and see if that can be adjusted, like I said, across the board for all ratepayers.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Mr. Gagne, do you have any comments?
I'm quite concerned about the issue of what I have seen, in the articles I've read about the expected cost of the plant improvements and how those are going to be paid for. With that said, we also have the issue that Tim has raised, and that is an equity issue across the ratepayer group. I think if you look at the scope of what a project like this for the number of units costs, that in fact the fee for the sewer and water fees is relatively a small percentage of that particular cost. And I would not be in favor of changing the rate, and I would not vote favorably upon the request.
Other board members, I think I agree with Mr. Gagne. I'm concerned about the timing of this request, and I'm concerned that we don't know how this adjustment fits into the overall cost of the project. And I'm not sure that any amount of additional information is going to change how I view this. Again, my concern is how these costs are spread to other ratepayers. And I appreciate the benefits of the project in many ways. And I also, Tim, has there been any discussion about traffic and whether there needs to be any kind of changes to Dartmouth Street and the various intersections out there?
I haven't looked into the traffic study. Has there been a traffic study on this? I believe
There was a traffic
There
study.
Yeah.
There was a traffic study. It went through the planning board, and there are changes in internal traffic flow between the various, if you go back into the Benny's lot, the way in which things interact and creating, they were balancing green space versus this, but on the public part of Dartmouth Street, there's not a substantial change that I'm aware of that was requested. And there was a traffic study that we paid for, and we paid for the town to do a separate peer review. One other point.
That's correct, yeah.
One other point, and I hear from the board, and I said I'm grateful for the opportunity to have spoken. There was reference to the fact that if we're trying to treat people evenly, and at least one other instance, someone was reduced to $10 instead of $12. And I don't know that they had the same circumstance that we did, which was to buy property with a certain expectation and have it changed. So I made what I thought was a fair ask, but rather than a complete rejection, I would ask that you consider that as an alternative. And it seemed like Mr. Barber had done some of the calculations on that.
So, Mr. Barber, if I recall correctly, the $10 fee was imposed on a project that was a conversion of an office building to residences. Is that correct?
It wasn't an actual built, constructed office
Right.
building. It was designed to be an office building in a commercial, zoned area. And
Right.
it was
So
converted
so
to
that
a
they had
multi-residential.
already applied for a fee, and this was an issue of addressing the increased flow and increased demand on the wastewater treatment facility. And that was done, what, 18 months ago, more or less?
Approximately, yes.
Yeah, okay. And, all right, so what's the pleasure of the board? Do you want to see this back next month? Or do we want to give Mr. Barber any direction, or where are we?
Mike, you're on mute. Mr. Gagne.
I would make the motion at this time that we would deny the request for a reduction in the fee.
Do Mr. Gagne makes a motion to deny the request? Do I have a second? The board will second. So let's vote on this. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
No,
Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
Yes,
The chair votes yes. The request is denied.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and Mr. Markey, I appreciate the time and effort you folks have put into this. As unfortunate as the timing and the lack of coordination at one or two key points is, I guess we all need to sort of pay attention to what's going on. I also am concerned about the timing of permits on this project. I stated that earlier. I'm uncomfortable. I have to say that I'm uncomfortable with the scope of work that's being done, and there are no other permits that have been approved by the town. I understand that that this is all legal. I get that. My experiences include other states where the process of large projects is very different. And I've been involved in large projects. And so this, again, I understand. I understand it's legal. It's different than my experience in other areas. So I'll just put that on the table. I'm learning at my advanced age. So, all right, thank you for your time.
Thank you again,
gentlemen.
everybody.
I appreciate
Take
it.
care. Bye-bye.
All right, new business B, Tim. Select board fee policy.
So, the select board, similarly to the Board of Public Works, and Department of Public Works, never had a fee policy for reductions or waivers for specific projects. So the select board is currently working on a draft fee policy. The board has that draft, towards non-DBW, requests for reductions and waivers. You know, while so they're looking to set a policy based on the type of development, whether it's 100% affordable or, you know, or percentage affordable, or nonprofit. So does the board wish to entertain a policy similar like that? Or I think the Board of Public Works had always looked at it as a request to the board that's presented to the board for every request for fee reductions or waivers, and that each project is looked up at, you know, independently. Or we could set that as a policy that any requests or waivers for any reductions or waivers in fees for any of the enterprise funds would have to be presented to the board in writing.
Tim, would you suggest we consider the enterprise fee structure differently than our other fees? For example, sewer and water, as opposed to some of the fees associated with roads?
Yeah, well, yeah, so because they are enterprise funded and they're funded by the residents through rates, it's not generally across the entire community. It's just residents who use water and sewer. I think it's, you know, it's fair for the board to see every request for those. If there's the board can also I guess be privy for any other fee reductions or waiver requests, be it the whether it's engineering inspection fees or, you know, I guess road construction fees for projects that do require, you know, road work.
Do we have a written policy now?
We do not. No, I checked for any policies, and I did not find a policy.
I think, Tim, the issue, you probably should get some input from your water and sewer engineering consultants. You got some excellent firms that cover a lot of Massachusetts cities and towns. And I think we ought to ask those firms how those cities and towns are addressing this. Because certainly the towns I know they represent in the Metro Boston area, they're dealing with growth issues that are much more rapid. And, you know, I'd like to see, as they always say, who's got something out there already that may be something we could review.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Let's,
and
read
Yeah,
that.
I can look at that. Yeah.
Ron, do you have any comments?
I mean, I've got a vivid memory of looking at a flatbed truck in front of City Hall with a commode on it and my name on it. But, I don't know, we should have some type of policy to, that, holds people to the fee structure that we have, but offers an opportunity for some discussion, I suppose. But then again, you open up a Pandora's box, which,
Well, if I understand, Tim,
Yeah,
we have a process to guide requests to the board for waivers. But right now, that process is something that is not as formally adopted as what we see being discussed at the select board. Is that right?
that is correct.
All right. So it seems to me that generally speaking, there should be as much similarity as possible between the select board's fee waiver process. This is a process now. And what the Board of Public Works would expect the Public Works staff to do with any fee requests. Now this is a, what, 1, 2, 3, 4-page process, and I appreciate the need to have the process spelled out. I appreciate the work that's shown here. I got to tell you, there's a lot of different procedures and other things in this town. So it's for a town, there's a lot to know before you do any work. However, I do like the idea of, to the extent we can, having a similar process for this board, for those things that we are responsible for. And as Water and Sewer Commission, Highway Commission, Tree Warden, and we have an enterprise fund for stormwater and for solid waste. I think we cover the bases in being able to appropriately consider fee waivers. So I think my personal preference would be to look at this and see how this may or may not be a good idea for the Public Works Board and bring something back for us to look at. Board members, do you have any comments?
no, I think that's a great idea. You know,
All right,
I-
so Tim, you would then follow what the select board is doing, and whatever they do you think they're going to take action on this fairly soon?
I would assume so, yes. But
right.
I will stay up on it and,
Yeah, and then when they have something that's definitive, you bring it back to us.
absolutely.
All right. Anything else on the select board fee policy? Okay, so next item is an approval from Fire District 1.
So another fee waiver request from Fire District 1. So Fire District 1 is currently under renovation, and while the existing building is currently serviced by domestic water and sewer, they are also looking at upgrading some of their existing services, including a fire service for the fire station. So the fee, there are fees associated with that, and they're asking for the waiver of fees.
And how much would the waiver involve? How much money?
So I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so currently, the fire protection fee is $6,000. the upgrade to the existing domestic water service, from a 1.5 inch to 2 inch is $2,200. And then the testing fee is $300, which includes, inspection services and, laboratory fees. And then there is a sewer cover fee, which is for the clean out cover that they have to purchase that cast iron cover from the town. So historically, the town has, or the board has waived fees for town projects, and I believe in the North Dartmouth Fire District 1 water connection fees were reduced, were waived, but not the cost of the meter and any other parts that need to be purchased from the town.
Tim,
Tim,
that's,
the board policy, the select board policy draft you showed us on page 2 explicitly exempts public safety units.
Correct.
So what fire department or fire district 1 is requesting would also be consistent with board policy, select board policy if it's adopted. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Board
In
members,
fact-
any questions?
So I would recommend to maintain the fees for the testing fees and for the sewer cover fee. That those are items that we expend money on. So we would,
Yeah, that was gonna be my comment. There are out-of-pocket fees that are paid for out of the enterprise accounts.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
those I feel strongly should be budgeted by the department that is purchasing and that's gonna use it.
correct.
So if I do some simple math here, that would result in a fee waiver of $8,200. Is that right, Tim?
That is correct.
Right.
One
Board
quick question, do they pay for water and sewer?
They do, yes.
They do.
Yep. Yeah, they pay the rates, they currently as they are connected. It's just the upgrades that they're doing to the building and required some upgrades to the services.
Okay.
Any other
Thank you.
questions, board members? All right, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve Fire District 1's request for rebates minus the testing fee and the manhole cost.
So I have a motion by Mr. LaBelle. Do I have a second?
second,
Second by Mr. Gagne. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
yes,
Board votes yes. Fee waiver for District 1 is approved. Next item is ADU utility connection fees.
Okay, so in looking at policies, board policies, and with the new regulations regarding accessory dwelling units in Massachusetts, even though the regulations are not 100% clear and could be amended in the future, I just wanted to update the board with the board's current policy, which was developed in 2006. The current regulations in Massachusetts allow for, I believe, up to a maximum of 900 square feet accessory dwelling unit that can be, rented and to non-family, which was different than the town's bylaws back in the day. And that may be increased to 1,000 square feet maximum, and it's also dependent upon a percentage of the initial dwelling on the property. So the 2006 policy states that any ADU units must pay the sewer system development charge of $1,500, which was the connection fee that's over 20 years old. When we increase the fees, we increase the fees per water service size. So it was based on demand. So a 3/4 inch service would now pay $2,500. A 1 inch service would be $3,000. Well, I look at an ADU unit, and when we look at the demand, we assume an average of 3-bedroom house. So that was based on in our, I see a 900 square foot ADU unit. It's not going to have that many bedrooms. If so, they're going to be really small. So I would recommend that we maintain, the $1,500 fee for additional dwelling units for the system development charge for sewer. The policy also states that a water connection fee is not required for any connections that are made after the existing water meter. So if they're tied into the existing house after the meter, then they don't pay a connection fee. If they connect anywhere before the meter or connect to the street, then they would have to pay the connection fee for water as well. So I was looking for the board, if the board would like to maintain that policy or make any recommendations to revise it.
Tim, the matter we just dealt on Dartmouth Street.
Yeah.
Those apartment units are very comparable in size and purpose as what an ADU would be. And in my opinion, I think the ADU unit should be treated in the same manner as you do the calculation for each of those apartment units.
Yeah.
And what the fee comes out in that schedule is what the fee will be for the ADU units. I think consistency here is important. These ADU units are, as I see them, are really no different than the creation of an apartment. It just creates more housing, specific housing units for, meeting the needs of the area. But I think they should be in the same format as you calculate for an apartment complex unit by unit.
So we actually we calculate based on bedroom. So it's based on bedroom, and we create a calculation of equivalent residential units based on the number of bedrooms. Is that what you're proposing? That's how we calculate it.
Methodology, which I believe is the bedroom units that
Yes.
we saw in your calculation sheet on the previous
Yes.
item. Yes.
So based on flow, consumption.
Based on flow, correct. Based on consumption. Yep. So based on when we talk units, right? I think, some people may consider, if you have 100 unit building, that's 100 units, but we look at it per bedroom for flow. So that's demand to the system, and we divide it by the average of 3 bedrooms or 330 gallons per flow, and that's how we figure out the fees. So that could also be used as well for this calculation.
Again, I think the objective is how we meet the changing needs of your capital improvements, and consistency there will help us, in the future when we're going to have to figure out how we're going to pay for those improvements when we reach that point where infrastructure is not adequate to handle. And I think going by gallons per bedroom is a good consistent policy.
Okay.
Ron, do you have any
That
comments?
policy.
Excuse me?
Do you have any comments?
So does it, with this ADU, if they're connecting downstream from the meter, are we still charging them for a connection?
So not for a water connect. Oh, I'm sorry. So if they're connecting before the water meter.
After the meter, if they connect after the meter, are we charging them?
We're not charging them for the water connection, but we are charging for the sewer.
Okay,
Because there's additional flow.
Yeah.
That we do charge. And that's always been it's been a policy since 2006. And it's been it's been used at the
Yep.
$1,500 rate.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm good. I think that's a good way to approach it.
All right, so Tim, I think given the date on this action, it would be smart for you to bring this back to the board and let us update the fee structure for this, for ADUs.
Absolutely. Will do.
All right. If there are no further comments on this item, we'll move on to item new business E, CDL training policy.
So our current OIT operating and training policy for CDL drivers was developed in 2023. We put $15,000 in the operating budget to accommodate for CDL training and licensing for both existing staff who are interested in the program, or outside staff that we can hire and that are interested in the program. Since the existing policy was based on reimbursement of 85% of the tuition and licensing fees were approximately at that time $3,000. So the reimbursement was a maximum of 85% or a maximum of $2,550. Since 2023, as everything else has inflated, the cost for the tuition and licensing fees has increased. So for a CDL Class B license, it's gone to about $4,500, and a Class A license has gone up to about $5,900. So I'm recommending that we revise the policy as presented to increase the reimbursement and break it up for 85% of a Class A with a round number of maximum of $5,000, and 90% reimbursement for Class B with a maximum of $4,000. And that way, that $15,000 could still help at least 3 employees per fiscal year obtain their license and reduce the burden on them to put money up front to get that license.
Board members, any questions or comments?
The only
How
comment
many,
I
how
have,
many people taking advantage of this? I'm sorry.
So initially, we had, I believe, 3 employees who were interested in it, but only 1 has moved forward. And has worked through all the classes, who just waiting for them to pass the test for the license. Since, like I said, but since then, the license and the tuition has increased dramatically. So I think that might prevent or kind of prevent somebody from being able to afford to move forward, because they have to put this money up front, and once they pass the test, it's reimbursable. So I think if we offer a higher reimbursement, it may incentivize the program a bit more.
What happens if they fail?
I think the tuition and testing fees, I think that gives them three tests, 3 chances to try. If they're existing staff and they fail, they don't get the reimbursement if they don't eventually pass, and they're not promoted to the driver position. If it's an outside candidate that comes in, we can hire somebody as a laborer and give them terms of their employment that they would need. We put a time limit of up to a year for them to take the class and pass the test, for them to maintain a position with the town.
So, Tim, if I hear you correctly, they have 3 opportunities to pass the test within the same fee. Is that right?
That is correct.
In other words, it doesn't cost money for them to take the test a second, second or even a third time if necessary.
Yes, that's what I'm told.
All right. And then what happens to the funding that is put in the budget for this if there aren't enough people to use the existing funding?
It goes back into the general fund.
Okay. Is there a way to roll that over into the same budget item?
I would have to speak with the finance director on that.
All right,
Because it's an approved as an annual operating budget
right,
by town meeting. I don't believe there's a way to roll that over, but
all
if
right.
there's any other way to do that, I can check.
Well, if it can't be done, it can't be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
The and besides the adjustment of the amounts, are there any other changes in this policy?
No, sir.
All right. Any other questions, board members? All right, do I have
I make
a
a
motion for
I make a
approval?
motion to accept the director's recommendation.
I have a motion to accept by Mr. Gagne. Do I have a second?
Second,
A second by Mr. LaBelle. Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
Yes,
Mr. LaBelle?
aye,
The chair votes aye. Motion, the recommendations of the director are approved. Next is item F, the tie and buy bond MS4 contract. Tim?
So, yeah, so this is our, permit year 7 for our MS4 permit, and we continue to work with Tie and Bond for our permitting and sampling outfalls and drainage structures. This agreement includes 1 day of dry weather outfall screening and 4 days of dry weather key manhole screening, and an additional 1 day of wet weather outfall sampling for outfalls with system vulnerability factors, or by town request if any additional outfalls we would like to look at. The scope also includes a continuous improvements and updates to the stormwater GIS for $45,000, and this is funded through the operating budget.
Board members, any questions or comments?
just on the illicit discharges, Tim. Are we taking positive actions if they're found
Yes,
to correct them?
yes. So if we're finding them in the stormwater, then you're going up gradient to structures to trace that
Okay, but-
IDE. Yep.
But the correction component is not involved in any of this.
It is not.
Okay.
Oh.
Have they
Tim?
been substantial, just as a side thought?
Not extremely substantial. Nope. We've had some high numbers, and we've gone back and tested, and the numbers have dropped. So this is a couple years ago. So we continue our testing, and if we,
Okay.
like I said, if we find any illicit discharge numbers, like I said, we trace back until we find either a cause or we can find a location that we can isolate
The source, yeah,
to find the source. Yeah.
okay.
Tim, one of the things I've learned with this EPA MS4 is that it is probably the least understood utility that, in fact, is a federal requirement by the EPA on cities and towns. And I would suggest that the consultant you just mentioned has significant experience with this, having used them for MS4 compliance plans in the last community that I was in. I would ask them if in fact they have any educational materials that are available in video form so that the community television could run some program on this, because I know where this is going. And I know how some of the Metro Boston and the bigger municipalities are dealing with this. And it's got to be understood that this is a federal requirement. And if you don't comply with it, just like sewer and water requirements, it's a mandate. And if you don't comply with it, you get fined.
Correct.
And, you know, this is going to be something that's going to be a substantial cost in the future and how it's dealt with and how it's paid for. So I would strongly ask them to see if they have some materials that they've used, familiarize other communities, and that's something we could put on a program on DCTV, because I know where this is going.
Yes, absolutely. And we do have some educational, documents and flyers that we put on our website. But I think a video would be great. I think a lot of residents don't understand, or because we had to create a stormwater bylaw and then stormwater regulations and stormwater maintenance. They don't understand the reasoning behind it a lot of times.
Yeah, you might even want to reach out to the, Region 1 people.
Yeah.
At EPA.
Yeah.
And I think also there are a lot of businesses that don't understand that in fact they need to produce a stormwater management plan. And I can tell you a number of businesses I'm familiar with who have been fined for not having a stormwater management plan. And the fines are in the tens of thousands of dollars. And then you got to apply. So this is something that's going to need some education. And I wouldn't want to see any businesses, in our community, get nailed with this if we are able to help them, understand that they may have a compliance issue and that they can get ahead of it before. Because I'll tell you right now, I know the EPA does not waive the fines. Businesses I know that have been fined have paid them. There are no waivers.
Yeah, no.
Tim, do you have, I agree with Mr. Gagne wholeheartedly. There are a couple of tie-ins here with other programs. The the issue of nitrogen control and the potential for requiring watershed management plans relates very closely to this program. So I think that you've got two levels of education. One is this is what the program is, this is what it does. And then there's a whole host of videos that could focus on individual actions. Pick up after your dog, be careful what you use for fertilizer, and don't dump stuff down the drain. And I think it'd be good to have a range of video material that runs regularly, and if it's a 3 to 5 minute clip that can go between shows, so much the better.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
So, yeah. And do you have any sense of what businesses are out there that may need compliance? This isn't something that we, the town, would be in charge of compliance, but as a neighborly gesture, we could remind them that they have some responsibilities. Is that right?
That is correct. So, we have a lot of businesses and developments, that commercial development that have on-site stormwater and BMPs, whether it's a detention pond or infiltration pond or subsurface. So they required that they have a stormwater management plan, and they also required, they require us to have a stormwater management plan for all BMPs throughout the town.
Right.
So if we find non-compliance for any of these plans or BMPs, that we're supposed to enforce fines as well.
Yep.
So the town has an affirmative responsibility for enforcement against commercial operations that would otherwise require a stormwater management plan. Is that right?
Correct.
Well, it's the EPA.
It's EPA
On the
through the
business.
town, yeah.
EPA is on the businesses, but I'm concerned that some may not, in fact, know.
Right.
And certainly the local newspaper that covers this, hopefully covers this subject, and those companies and businesses, check with their advisors and consultants.
Yeah, Tim, I think it'd be good to give some thought to adding some work. I don't know whether it would be through a contract like tie and bond, or to give somebody in the town professional staff a task to develop some kind of informational flyer that could be provided to some of the businesses that we think would have to have a stormwater management plan. I just think if Mr. Gagne is correct, and I suspect that he is, if it isn't sometime in the next 3 or 4 years, it'll be sometime soon thereafter that stormwater will become an issue. And if for no other reason than protecting water quality in Buzzards Bay and trying to support the shellfish industry. And I mean, you can see these things are all kind of tied together.
Yeah.
And whatever the town can do reasonably to help its businesses, the better,
Yes. Yep.
right?
You know,
Anything
these-
else on this item?
Nope.
All right, I will entertain a motion.
I would make the motion that we accept the contract as formulated and presented by the director for the town's continued phase of compliance to the MS4 regulations.
So I have a motion by Mr. Gagne. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second by Mr. LaBelle. Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
Yes,
Mr. Gagne votes yes. Mr. LaBelle? how do you
Aye.
vote? Mr. LaBelle votes yes. The chair votes yes. The contract is approved. Next item is approval of looks like a contract amendment for Northeastern Tree Service. Excuse me, gentlemen, if I could just pause us here for a moment. I noticed Mr. O'Neill has joined us. Mr. O'Neill, with respect to your position on the select board, is there something you'd like for us to address while you're here?
If you are speaking, Mr. O'Neill, you are on mute, just by the way.
All right, well, then let's continue. And so Tim, Northeastern Tree Service.
So Northeastern Tree Service is the contractor that was hired to complete the biofilter upgrade. So during the upgrade, they mentioned that the amount of media that was calculated in the contract that was created by the consultant was not going to be enough to maintain the 3-foot elevation of media, and then they would need an additional quantity. So we discussed these quantities and the amount, and came to an agreement of an additional 250 cubic yards of material that was needed, which added an additional $24,800 to the existing contract. While I administratively approved the work to continue, so we didn't hold up the project and have the biofilter offline for a longer period of time, I discussed with them that I would have to bring this back to the board for approval. At this time, we haven't received all of the slips because there was a delay in construction because they had to make more media. So we don't have all of the slips for the additional volume of media. So we're just waiting on that so we can finalize the final payment.
So Tim, the consulting engineer that came up with the plan and the design, it sounds like to me there's an errors and omissions on behalf of the engineering consultant on the miscalculation. You certainly get a better price if it's all in part of the final bid that they put in.
Yeah.
I think you should have some preliminary conversations with those engineering firm and see what they're going to do to help ameliorate the additional cost.
Yeah, and I also discussed this with the contractor, and they did maintain the same cost structure for the material that had to be brought in after the fact.
So a price per yard,
The price per yard, correct.
yeah. Who's the consultant?
Woodard and Curran.
Yeah, I would have a strong conversation with them.
Absolutely.
We have the funding for this?
We do, the funding is in the article for the biofilter upgrade.
I would ask that you do have a conversation with them and keep us in the loop as to what they say. I think, we have a fairly strong case, and that's a very large and reputable firm, and I'm surprised, this variation based upon what the total cost of that project, you got a variation of about an additional 20% here. And
Correct.
I want to know from Woodard and Curran what they're going to do to address this. But I know you have to certainly move forward, and I would make a motion that we advance the additional appropriation for the purposes of meeting what the requirement was to complete this project in a timely manner.
Motion by Mr. Gagne to approve. Do I have a
I'll-
second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. LaBelle. Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Gagne votes yes. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye,
Mr. LaBelle votes yes. Chair votes yes. Item is approved. And Tim, you'll bring this back to us with additional information.
I will, yes.
All right. Okay, next item for discussion is New Bedford water and sewer rate increase. Tim?
So the city of New Bedford has approved an increase in their water rate for the town of 8.6%, and a increase of the sewer rate by 3%, which was considered the CPI.
Tim, I would just like to note for the record, so it's in the minutes, that I'm going to abstain from the discussion on this particular subject, having been involved with the discussions on this particular matter as I served as the interim New Bedford CFO.
All right. Mr. LaBelle, do you have any questions?
this is gonna, effective, July 1, 2025. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Yes.
Yes, yep,
Right, so-
You know, I mean, we have an intermunicipal agreement with the city. We're subject to their rates.
we are.
And it looks like this rate structure and the increases were adopted in 2021. Is that right, Tim?
Yeah, I believe the
Another-
council had approved a rate increase spread out over 4
Over
or
a number
5
of-
years.
Over a number of
Yes.
years, correct. That is
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah,
All right,
so this is something we're aware of annually.
It's annually, yeah, so, but the city does vote annually on the increases.
and is this part or considered in our budget?
Yes,
All right, any other questions, board members?
No.
All right, next item is item I, approval of water and sewer rates.
right. So I'm just gonna share my screen here. Okay, you can all see this?
Yep.
All right, so in last year, during our water and sewer rate study, with Weston Sampson and, the Abrahams Group, we discussed multiple rate structures, for water and sewer and, recommendations for moving forward with rate, structures based on, operational budget and capital improvement. So we looked at 5-year plans and we looked at 10-year plans. So this is our 10-year water rate, for a high priority capital that we had approved, a 7.5 increase last year. And, that was recommended, to continue throughout, FY31, to continue to, fund our capital improvements that are proposed for our water facilities and, infrastructure. And
So,
this, go ahead.
Tim, the long-term capital planning committee has included water supply projects in their consideration. As you look at this and consider the kinds of upgrades that may be necessary, say in the next 2 to 5 years, can those projects be funded through these rate increases, or is there a high probability that we would have to go out for some kind of external funding?
So the 10-year plan, as shown here, included, spending, 1.5 million per year, or total 1.5 million through the 10 years in retained earnings, and 21.9 million in borrowing, which is all also funded, throughout years, could be 20 years, for borrowing, but also through our retained earnings. So this included, like I said, 21.9 million in capital, plus another additional 1.5 actually in retained earnings for the additional capital projects, smaller capital projects like vehicles or equipment, or smaller improvements. I'm not sure if our capital plan was in here. No.
Well, that's all right. I just wanted to be clear that the
It is. So this is our overview here.
yeah, that the principal and interest payments are included in those in that fee structure.
Absolutely.
All right.
Tim, since that 21.9, if you could drop back to this previous slide. So the $21.9 million in capital improvements that is going to be through borrowing, are they looking to fund the principal and interest on that over the 10-year period, or does that go out to a longer 15 or 20-year period?
When we looked at it, I believe we forecasted it out for about 15 to 20 years.
So I'd be interested in knowing from Weston and Sampson what, the payments are going to be on that for the full duration of the borrowing, and what the rates are going to be, to continue to pay those principal and interest, whether it's a level principal and interest, annual payment. And I think my biggest concern about 15 to 20 year is, what are your capital needs going to be in that period of time, and how is it going to affect, potential of another borrowing, and compounded with the last 5 or 10 years of this borrowing. I think we need a little longer schedule here.
And we do have the projections for the payoff of the debt schedule, based on the borrowing that we proposed. So I have that in a spreadsheet that I can I can
Do they-
send you.
Do they factor what your additional capital needs will be after the 10 years that are shown here? And how that affects those payments in the remaining years beyond 10?
I'm not sure. I know they, through the 10 years, but I'm not sure if we went further with capital beyond the 10 years. I don't believe so.
Can you, being new to the board, I'm wondering if maybe we could set up a time where we could sit down with the folks from Weston and Sampson. I don't know if all of our board members need to be there, but I would like to have a little bit more time to ask them some questions face to face before any kind of action on this.
Absolutely. And that can be either, in a public board meeting, or we can sit down and discuss it. We meet monthly with Weston and Sampson, so you're welcome to. I can set it up as one of those meetings as well.
Why don't you set up
So
as
if more than one of us came, it would have to be an approved meeting?
That
yeah,
is correct.
I think we would, we would post it so that all the board members could come as a meeting, but that would be great in person.
Yeah, I would enjoy that conversation. Who is coming up with these numbers? I mean, what are the projects?
So if you can see that, that's the project that was in the presentation.
Yeah,
So,
no,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so we had, based on our full evaluation of the water infrastructure, treatment facilities, distribution system, we looked at upgrades for water quality and efficiency, and trying to be more, self-sustained. So it included multiple infrastructure upgrades at each of our treatment facilities, including 4-log clear wells, and piping upgrades to increase flow and efficiency at 687, 299, and we're currently working on upgrades at our 579 Westport Road treatment facility, where that was funded by APA, so luckily it doesn't affect our rates and our retained earnings, but that project is moving along. They're working on installing the clear well, and I think the next phase will be installing the 4-log. But these are the forecasted estimates on that, and there is an estimate based on today's estimates. There is an increase annually for each project that was pushed out to say, FY 26, 27, 28, 29, and so on.
Tim, the numbers that you have for these various projects, and looking at the year, 2 years out for some of the substantial, others as much as 3 years out and more. I don't think it would hurt to have some of our other consultants who are good at estimating Chapter 149 projects, for public construction, to take a second look at this. I think based upon what I've heard on some of the other public works projects around, what is estimated and what is actually coming in, trending, I just heard one yesterday that they were 35% above what the engineering firm had estimated for the cost of the project. And if we're gonna make a schedule, I think maybe a second set of eyes on these numbers and some input would be helpful.
So Tim, what I hear is that the board should be invited to the next meeting with Weston Sampson. And if there are 2 or more board members that are able to attend, you'll not need enough lead time to notice that. And you can notice it as either as a public work session or as a meeting with the board. I'm not sure what what the best way to describe it is. And then I also hear that you should ask and perhaps get some estimates for labor to take a second look at these estimates.
Absolutely.
I don't think it needs to be a big, these don't need to be large contracts for doing a second look, but simply look at some of the assumptions as to increases in costs. And you may need to have an estimate of range and then talk about whether the numbers should, in these spreadsheets, should be increased. Right? If that is done, that definitely needs to come back to us in a public hearing. All right,
Absolutely.
one of
I
our
agree.
meetings. Okay, anything else, board members?
Oh,
All right, now, Tim, you want us to take action here.
Yeah, so I didn't finish up with the sewer rates.
All right.
So I ended with the water rates and then looking at the background of sewer rates in FY 23, we increased rates by 9%, and then last year FY 24 rates were increased by 5%, and then based on the 10-year capital, we increased rates by 7%.
All right, so Tim, in the future, when we are talking
I'm
about
sorry.
rates, I appreciate the information that's included in this presentation,
Yes,
but I think there ought to be some kind of a cover memorandum from you to the board with a clear recommendation for what it is you're asking us to do.
I can definitely put that in writing. I mistakenly said 7%. The last year the rate was increased by 8.5% for sewer, and it was projected and presented to the board last year with the 10-year capital and proposed rates seen here for 8.5% per year. And I can put that language in writing in a memorandum for the board as well.
Is it, do you need to have us approve rates today?
We don't, we can, you know, we typically look at the rate projections and recommendations and take some time to review over a couple meetings, so we can look at it at the next board meeting. And then
And when would you need these rates to be effective?
these would need to be effective for July 1st.
And how long is the posting period between when this board takes action and when the rates actually go into effect?
Typically 10 days.
All right. Board members, do you have any other comments? How do you feel about taking a second look at this at our next meeting?
I would prefer that so I could have some time to study this, and I agree with you, Rob. I'd like to have the recommendations of the director in a memo to us with the justification.
All right, Ron, any comments?
No, I've read this, be honest with you, it's scary. What are we gonna need? In what year? I see estimates on sewer for, large capital improvements, but boy, I'll tell you, those numbers, like, who came up with those numbers? I mean, I've worked with Abrams Group in the past, but this is going to get very complicated.
Is
I think it's a good idea, Tim, to have a conversation about whether the numbers that were generated months ago are still good. I mean, we heard today that construction costs for an apartment building have gone up 38%. Well,
that's since in 8 years. Yeah.
yeah, well, and So it's quite possible that the numbers that we look at, even if we look at them every year, are gonna increase substantially. And we need to find a way to, first of all, explain what we're doing and then be reasonable about whatever we think is required to keep up. So, all right.
Just one more quick, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, just, I've talked about this in the past. I'm just gonna throw it out there again. On average, how much water do we buy annually from the city of New Bedford? Just off the top, yeah.
It used to be somewhere in, I think it was 17 to maybe 23%.
Of
And,
the total consumption of the town?
Yes, but this year it was exceptionally higher due to we had electronic issues, so we had
Mechanical problems, we had
Yeah.
drought problems.
yeah, we had drought problems, but it was more towards the the transformer failures. And then during storms, we had multiple failures that put our wells down for a number of months. That required us to purchase a lot more water than typical.
Yeah. And then you look at the growth potential of the town. And
Correct.
those consumptions are gonna go up.
Yep.
Our capital investments over the next 10 years are certainly going up.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I guess I'm just spouting here, but, and New Bedford's got rate increases for water and sewer for the next 4 years, calculated in,
Correct.
just an annual vote.
Right. And if there are
Almost
no
at-
other comments or questions, Tim, you'll bring this back to us at our last meeting, and you will include board members in the next discussion with Weston Sampson.
I will, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is Pascamanset Drinking Water Protection Land Acquisition. Tim?
So, we are finally moving forward with the Pascamanset Drinking Water Protection Land Acquisition. The purchase and sales agreement was recently amended by the board based on an expiration of the purchase and sales. So this is the closing date on this purchase is scheduled for May 28th, and due to some of the sellers' requests, the amendment, the purchase and sales was amended one last time. It was in your packet for approval. Once approved, it will go into the attorneys, and then continue the closing date. Like I said, is scheduled for May 28th. This is funded through $350,000 from the state through the Drinking Water Supply Protection Grant, $250,000 from Community Preservation, and the additional approximately $190,000 through Buzzards Bay Coalition to fund this, and then Buzzards Bay Coalition will hold the conservation restriction on this.
Right. Any questions, board members?
So, Tim, do you need a motion to authorize you on the 28th of May on behalf of the board to sign for this acquisition to go through then?
That would help if needed. It will be mostly handled by the attorneys.
Right. So I would make the motion that we authorize the Director of Public Works, Tim Barber, as our authorized representative on our behalf to execute on the acquisition on the 28th of May.
I'll second that.
All right, so I have a motion by Mr. Gagne and a second by Mr. LaBelle. Tim, I noticed this agreement has a signature block that includes all three members.
Yes, we'll need the board to also sign and approve the amendment, the Sixth Amendment of the purchase and sales here, and then sign.
All right. So as to the first motion, Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. LaBelle?
Aye.
Mr. Gagne votes yes. Mr. LaBelle votes aye. Chair votes yes. Tim, do we need so the item is approved, the motion is approved. Tim, do we need a second motion for approval of this actual agreement
Yes.
for execution?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
I would make that motion.
so I have a motion by Mr. Gagne to approve the amendment of the purchase and sale agreement. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second by Mr. LaBelle. Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Gagne votes yes. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. LaBelle votes yes. Chair votes yes. The amendment is approved. Tim, anything else on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, next item is a discussion of a willing donor letter pending legal review. Tim, can you bring us up to date on this?
So together with the purchase of this land and the conservation restriction being held by Buzzards Bay Coalition, the Buzzards Bay Coalition has also received the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service grant through its North American Wetlands Conservation Act grant program, focused on protecting 192 acres of land in the Acushnet. And Buzzards Bay Coalition was able to complete the protection of 100 acres, but unable to complete the acquisition of the additional 92 acres. And to complete the grant, as proposed, they're asking the board to approve a willing donor. And Alan Decker is also here from the Buzzards Bay Coalition, and I just want to let the board know that this is currently with town council for legal review as well.
Tim, do you have a sense of when we may get something back from town council?
I do not.
All right. Mr. Decker, do you want to make some remarks?
I'd be happy to. Good morning, everybody. I'm Alan Decker with Buzzards Bay Coalition, and Mr. Barber is exactly right. I wanted to just give you a little bit more detail. So we routinely look to this program through the Federal Fish and Wildlife Service to help us with our open space land acquisition projects. And we had a grant, as Mr. Barber alluded to protect some significant acreage in the town of Acushnet inside the Buzzards Bay watershed. We were able to complete a majority of that acreage, but were unable, for reasons that aren't germane to this conversation, to complete the additional 92 acres that we promised to protect in the grant proposal. So I spoke with Tim a while ago. Actually, this has been in discussion for a while, about enabling us to count the 195 acres of the Pascomanskett Woods project towards our fulfillment of this federal grant acreage protection commitment that we made to the federal government, because the habitat that Pascomanskett Woods project has is very compatible with the program. Basically, freshwater wetlands and then buffering uplands happen to be the type of habitats that this NAWCA program, the North American Wetlands Conservation Act program, want to protect, principally for migratory birds, migratory waterfowl. And so I proposed the Pascomanskett project, and the protective activities, not the town's purchase of the land. The protective activity is our holding the conservation restriction that you've already reviewed and signed on this project. That's what was proposed to the Federal Fish and Wildlife Service. They reviewed what I sent them, looked at the data, the acreage, the wetlands coverages, and what the conservation restriction would protect against and further allow permitted uses and activities, and found it to be a qualified project to count. So in other words, Fish and Wildlife Service has accepted this acreage to help complete that grant. So part of that process is having the grantor, which in this case will be the town of Dartmouth, the granting of the conservation restriction interest to us, having the town provide this willing donors statement. It is part of the grant requirement, and all it simply says is that we would not otherwise be able to acquire the conservation restriction if we hadn't reached an amicable agreement with the town. That's federal speak for the Buzzards Bay Coalition does not have the ability to use eminent domain to acquire property interests. We're a private party, so we have to reach an amicable agreement with the conveyor, with the grantor. And in this case, again, that's the town of Dartmouth. And then you are donating the conservation restriction interest to us. And so there's no value, there's no payment for that. So there's no valuation. There's no valuation of the value of the interest being donated. That's not necessary. And so you're waiving the necessity to provide that for the Fish and Wildlife Service's purposes. Then it also says that you acknowledge that this is part of we have a name associated with this actual grant project, and it was the Mattapoisett Valley Wetlands Grant Agreement. That's the project this acreage is going to go to help protect. Now, I did mention it's in Acushnet, and you might be wondering how this works. The project area for that the Fish and Wildlife Service considers for this project is actually the entire watershed for Buzzards Bay. Pascomanskett Woods falls within the watershed for the bay, so it's an eligible project to propose to the grant program, and they accepted it. The other two final statements are just that you're attesting that there are no tenants, other businesses, other property interests on the property when you take ownership, and that is true. You are acquiring full fee interest of the property next May 28th, next week. I believe that's next Wednesday. So there are no tenants on the property, and there are also no other businesses operating on the property. And those two statements simply have to do with whether or not there would have to be tenant relocation or a business relocation as part of your acquisition of the property. And that's not the case. These are just requirements the grant program has. So that willing donor statement is part of our acknowledgement for this grant. And so what I've asked through Mr. Barber is for the board to authorize him to sign that said statement. I know it's with town council for review. It's simply a statement of facts concerning the project, and it would need to be signed prior to or as part of the closing next Wednesday. Can't be dated after the acquisition happens. So those are the elements of it. I also just want to make sure you're aware, once the conservation restriction is on record, which is going to happen essentially simultaneously with the town's acquisition, the order of documents will be next week. Town of Dartmouth through the board purchases the property, and then the conservation restriction will follow on record almost simultaneously after that in the progression of documents filed at the registry. You've already seen the conservation restriction and it's been signed and it's ready to go. The secretary has signed off on it and everything. Not to belabor points, but we were ready to do this last June. And then at the literally 11th hour, maybe even 11th hour and 45 minutes before closing, seller determined they had an undealt with probate interest, an estate interest that had to be resolved. And that's what's been the delay between last June and effectively this May, getting that property interest dealt with. And that's actually what the amendment of the purchase and sale agreement is related to. Town council wanted that estate added as a seller of the interest, just to tie that in with the sale from the rest of the property interests held by the family that agreed to sell the property. So all of that is ready to go. But when the conservation restriction is put on record, we, the coalition, are then going to file a notice that simply alerts the public at large, the record, that this acreage, this 195 acres, is tied to this grant that we have, the Mattapoisett River Valley Water Wetlands Grant, and that we are holding responsibility to adhere to the grant requirements. It has no effect on the town's ownership whatsoever of the property. And I would like to remind you that one of the permitted uses and reserved rights in the conservation restriction, should it become necessary in the future, is to explore the property's use for additional pumping wells should the town need it in the future, up to 4 wells in a 10-acre area, 4 acres plus some additional auxiliary land around it. So this is doing nothing to impede the town's ability to do that in the future. I don't believe there have been any determinations of suitability at this point, but it's just reserved for the board to explore should capacity become an issue. And this property could support, you could determine if the property would support drinking water wells in that 195 acres. So the notice of grant participation is something we would put on. We sign it. It's our responsibility. We're adhering to the grant. And so we're very excited about helping the town complete this project. And that's what this willing donor statement is all about. Not to go on, but I just wanted to make sure that you were understood and were aware of what was being asked and the ramifications of it this morning. Thank you.
Board members, any questions, Mr. Gagne?
Hi, Alan. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Welcome to the board.
And that was a very good explanation. I had talked with Tim about this sometime earlier, and your clarification has helped me understand what the purpose is, and I'm very clear on it now. You must be also a mind reader, because you probably saw me and you knew what I would raise from Mattapoisett, and that is the issue of the wells. And I'm very pleased to hear that you have encompassed that, and I'm perfectly ready to go forward.
Right, Tim, I'm going to come back to my question. I'll state it a little differently. How do we encourage the town council to finish their work on these related issues?
Yeah, if the board votes in favor of moving forward with this, I can reach out to town council and request expedition.
All right, I suggest that if the board is willing to approve this, that they approve it and allow a substantial improvement and allow any necessary changes suggested by town council in order to keep everything on track.
Oh.
Mr. Gagne.
I would make the motion that we authorize the Public Works Director to approve the document if there are not substantial changes to the form that we would be unaware of. If there are substantial changes to the form and its content, that he would share those changes with us. And we would be afforded an opportunity, if necessary, to approve those changes. If it is not, if it is to the form that we have had copies to review, then I'm fine with that.
All right, I have a motion to approve by Mr. Gagne. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. LaBelle. Mr. Gagne, how do you vote?
Yes,
Mr. Gagne votes yes. Mr. LaBelle?
Yes,
Mr. LaBelle votes yes. Chair votes yes. Item is approved. Thank you, Mr. Decker, for your time and your patience.
Not at all.
Yes.
Thank you all very, very much. I'll work with Mr. Barber and with town council to bring this project across the finish line. It's a win-win. We're very happy to help the town protect the Pascomanskett River and potentially, afford water wells drinking water wells if they're needed. But this is great habitat to protect, and we're very pleased to be helping the town with this project. So thank you for your time this morning.
Thank
you,
you.
Alan, and thank you for your detailed explanation.
All
That was
right,
great.
Tim,
Thank
I'll
you.
be in touch, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank y'all.
All right,
And
next
just-
item is a discussion of the long-range capital planning. The situation is that the committee was put together by the select board, and in order to begin a high visibility public education about the town's long-term financing needs, what those projects are and how it would work, the committee will give a 10-minute presentation at town meeting. And then the committee members will make themselves available after town meeting if there's any, if any individuals have any comments or questions. And then the intent of the committee is to hold workshops in September, possibly October, for 3 specific groupings of projects. One of those groupings are public works projects comprising water supply projects, wastewater collection and treatment projects, and the bridge. So with that, Tim, can you put the presentation up on the board, please?
All right, can you see that?
Yes.
My screen? Okay. So, title page. What is long-range planning? Looking forward, long-range capital planning looks years into the future so the town can anticipate, prepare, and save for large capital projects. 2 type of projects: long-range projects of one-time large capital expenses typically met through long-term borrowing. Projects are anticipated years in advance and cannot be covered by the town's annual operating budget. And then 3, identifying projects. Multiple projects will fall under long-range capital planning. These projects must be considered based on need, value, and cost benefit. Here we see our long-range capital planning committee.
While we're kind of going through the introductory slides, Mr. Tattlebaum will give the presentation. Go
Okay.
ahead, Tim.
Some of the top projects, some of which Mr. Almy stated, including the Payne Bridge design and construction, drinking water treatment facilities, wastewater collection and treatment infrastructure, but also, Dartmouth High School roof and windows, Dartmouth Middle School replacement, Dartmouth Council on Aging Phase 2, the DeMello and Potter School replacement, Quinn School, Memorial Stadium, and our recreational center.
All right, before you go on, Tim, earlier in our meeting, some of the board members mentioned the need to look further than 10 years at potential large capital projects. That's what is being done here. So to the extent that there are additional projects out 15, 20, even perhaps 30 years, our board should have a discussion about what those projects might be. And as the town is working on this project, that is the long-term capital planning projects, I have a suspicion this is one of these committees that's going to be around for a while. And this list and the dates and the descriptions are probably going to change with time. So I think it's incumbent on the Public Works Department to keep this group apprised of either new projects or change in dates.
Yeah, priorities may change based on circumstance as well, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right. So go ahead. Yep.
So for
Alright, so-
Public Works,
Yeah.
the three long-range capital projects is the drinking water treatment. That's actually a picture of the wastewater treatment facility, but drinking water treatment facility upgrades, secondly, wastewater collection and treatment infrastructure, and the Peyton Aaron Bridge.
Tim, can you get me a different picture, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Because we definitely don't want to be drinking out of that one, that supply. The school projects, have prioritized the high school roof and windows, the middle school, replacement, DeMello and Potter School replacements, and, Quinn School repairs. The community service projects, including, Maria Connor Center for Active Living at the Council on Aging, a recreational center, and a Memorial Stadium upgrades. And here are your anticipated start dates on some of these projects.
As just a footnote here, these projects, all of them have a very long lead time. And so this is simply a way of explaining to the public that they're not all going to happen at once.
Right, as I can say that, the Peyton Aaron Bridge design has been in design for, a couple of years now, and it's, it's still below the 25% design mark. So there are definitely long lead times for some of these. Payment options include debt exclusion, grants and funding, enterprise fund, and MSBA funding, and timeline on some of these projects for assigning estimated costs.
Right.
And
So
here's
this is where we, as a board, need to see if there is a date in September, early October that is better for us so that we are able to attend a discussion. This would be an evening discussion at the North Branch Public Library. You notice that the location of these various discussions is moved around in the town. That's deliberate. And North Branch Library was considered a way to spread these meetings out. So I realize that September and October are pretty far in the future, but are there any known dates that on on a Thursday that would be bad evening dates? If not, what I would propose to the committee is to probably pick the fourth week in September, which would be September 25th. And then if there are problems that arise, that we adjust that date by a week into the beginning of October.
I have
Which, by the way, would be my birthday.
I have a question of Tim. The issue of the replacement and repair of the public infrastructure, the roadways, the issue of sidewalks and sidewalk handicap accessibility. I don't see that on the plan, and I don't particularly think that you're going to be able to stay ahead or even make progress in those items that I just mentioned. And I'm wondering why that's not on the long-range capital plan. It certainly is as big or maybe greater expenditure than the improvements that you need in water and sewer. And I'm somewhat wondering why that's not on the plan.
That I'm not sure. I know there has been discussion with long range planning based on the roads and road maintenance moving forward, and what the costs would be to bring up the roads into bring up all the roads into satisfactory condition and keep a cycle of maintenance that would maintain that. I think my projected cost was about $10 million per year to maintain all the roads in a great shape and give it a good rating. We also we currently have been working with our consultant on upgrading our roadway maintenance program, asset management, GIS software, and interactive GIS for our rating our roads, and we have all new brand new inspections. So all of the reporting and the pricing that goes along with the road maintenance is all upgraded as well. So our estimates are closer to real costs, and this project is almost complete, and we'll have access to that. I'm hoping within the month.
So, Tim, as a matter of strategy, we did discuss whatever backlog of road repair, whether that could be addressed without going for outside financing.
Right.
But I think the issue that Mr. Gagne is raising is new from the standpoint of consideration by the committee, which is to bring the whole town up to ADA compliance. Is that correct?
Well, certainly the discussions I've had with Tim in the projects that his department has done for sidewalk improvement and handicap accessibility, and at the same time, a complete rebuild of the particular road or street that they involved, is that it's a costly venture, and he has a list and it's prioritized. And I've been in government now 43 years, and Chapter 90 funding, they have argued every single year that should be increased from $200 million statewide to more of a realistic number adjusted by inflation. Unfortunate part, it's never been done. So the promise of it, going forward, that you're going to get adequate funds with rising costs, are not going to happen. Now, granted, you get some federal money through the TIP plan, but that's a long wait because everybody else in Bristol County is ranked on that same TIP plan with the same problems that Dartmouth has. So I think the issue of funding it and how to fund it is a paramount, major fiscal concern, and I would like to see that addressed.
I'd like to also add regarding ADA compliant and sidewalk upgrades, we're also working on that as our next phase. So looking, we have a report on all of our ADA or all of our sidewalk in town, and we're looking at adding that reporting and inspections and compliance onto the asset management program as well as a second phase, and I think that'll help us again with cost estimates and rating. But I think Mike's right in getting additional funding for the long range to maintain all of our roads and all of our sidewalks.
Tim, do you know if the town has done a comprehensive evaluation of ADA compliance
Of our sidewalks?
of everything, including sidewalks and buildings, for example?
So there was an ADA compliance plan. I think it was quite a while ago, but I believe that the building commissioner is now the ADA compliance person for facilities. I haven't seen anything recent, but we had done basically an ADA compliance report based on all of our sidewalks. So we have that report, and then we had looked at our building years ago, and we upgraded our building to be more compliant with ADA by reconstructing one of our bathrooms to meet ADA compliant, so our facility would meet that.
Since this has arisen as an issue, could you plan on coming back to us, perhaps not in June, but in July, with a little bit more full discussion of a couple of things? One, what are the outstanding DPW issues associated with ADA compliance, whether it's sidewalks or any of our own buildings? And then secondly, how that relates to the rest of the town, because I think there's implied in Mr. Gagne's set of questions and concerns is whether there is an ADA component for this long-term capital planning, or whether the town is in a position where, as an ongoing annual budget matter, they can meet whatever the requirements are. But I think it's a fair question, and I think it needs to be asked. But I don't have the information to ask that question in the committee. But if you could help me with some background, I'd be happy to carry it in and, see whether that explicitly needs to be part of this process.
Absolutely, and a few years back, I believe it was 2020. We had looked at the sidewalk issues and ADA compliant, and it was the former director's idea that the decision to if it's going to be too expensive. So one, you have a lot of tree issues and root issues ruining the sidewalks, right? And then is it feasible cost wise to remove and replace those sidewalks to make them in compliance, or remove the sidewalks and no longer have sidewalks on some of the lower pedestrian traveled areas, and basically focus on the main thoroughfares that have sidewalks. So we've done some removal where the conditions were really in bad shape, and we plan to do some as well. But in going the opposite way and reconstructing these to bring them up to compliance is an exorbitant amount of money. And I think if we put a cost associated with that, I think that might be some good long-range planning to bring all these up to compliance as well.
All right, so you bring this back to us, say July?
Yeah, I'll plan for the July meeting. Like I said, we'll be meeting. I'm not sure if we'll have all the asset management for the reporting, but we do have our current report.
All right. Any other questions, board members? All right, next item is, I want to confirm that the September 25th date is a fair target for an evening meeting on Public Works projects. I don't know that all of us need to be there, but that would be a week after our regular meeting, which is the third Thursday. So if that's an okay target, then we'll put that up there at town meeting.
That's okay with me. Thank you.
Fine with me.
All right. All right, next item are committee updates. Any other board members with any committee updates?
No.
All right, the select board has discussed establishing a water quality advisory committee for some 18 months. One of the assistant town administrators developed a framework for that committee. And I don't know when the select board will look at that framework. I would expect, I don't know, I have no way of knowing. But once that committee is established, there will be a position for a Public Works board member. And we can discuss who would serve in that role. That's all I have. All right, Tim, you want to do director's update?
Sure. So, union negotiations, both the United Steelworkers and the Laborers Union in the DPW have agreed to a bridge agreement of 3% cost of living increase because their agreements expire at the end of June. So this will give the town some time to enter into negotiations for July 1st of 2026. Also, the town working on a compensation and reclassification study. And I think that's part of the, rather than negotiate now for 3 years, work in the compensation and reclassification study, and then negotiate with the unions moving forward.
Tim, when that study is underway, could you brief us and also, as you think appropriate, provide an opportunity for us to comment at the draft stage?
Absolutely. All right. Next up, just an update on our drought declaration. As of May 20th, the state has updated the drought declaration, and where last month we were reduced from a significant drought to a moderate drought, level 1, and the Cape and Island was still at a significant drought in northwestern Massachusetts was in still a significant drought. As of May 20th, we remain at a moderate drought, and northwestern Mass has been reduced to no drought level anymore, but the Cape and Islands still are at a significant drought. So while recent rain has improved stream flow and reduced fire risk and has somewhat improved water tables, groundwater levels, since they take a lot longer to react, they still haven't seen the improvement to the groundwater levels needed to remove the drought status. So it remains at a level 1 moderate drought. Any questions or comments on that?
No.
Oh,
For the Arbor Day celebration, the tree committee had been working with us at DPW along with MON Landscaping, and their project this year was to remove a dead tree at Town Hall and replace that tree along with other trees that were removed in the past, and with 8 trees, some along the face of Town Hall and some out on the streetscape to increase the streetscape and aesthetics of that area. Those trees have all been planted, and they're proposing a small celebration with Town Hall staff, some media, and the tree committee on the 30th between 12 and 12:30. So that's on Friday, May 30th.
Tim, have you been able to secure in your budget an appropriation for tree replacement in town?
So this year in the operation budget, I did include a line item increase for a tree replacement.
Great.
So where most of our tree work has been with maintenance and removal, I see a great need for replacement. And I do have some projects in mind.
Great.
yeah, and you'll check with the tree committee?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I've already reached out to them. So
very good.
So I'm planning on attending the celebration on the 30th. So I'll update the board next month on how that went. Another update, Green Up Day, with the kind of scheduled around Earth Day, between April 19th and April 27th. Residents are able to pick up free this year purple bags for cleaning up their respective neighborhoods and along the streets of Dartmouth. And the residents this year, they picked up and they place at central locations designated by the town, and then our staff will pick up the waste and take them to Crapo Hill. This year, residents bagged just over a ton of trash, so 2,140 pounds of trash from their respective neighborhoods during the cleanup. So give props to the residents of Dartmouth for taking that upon themselves and cleaning up the town.
Good.
Next up, food waste. Residents have continued to support redirecting food waste from the waste stream and bringing them to our bins at the transfer station. And now the town has, alongside the district, have worked with Black Earth to come in and do some curbside pickups. So based on subscription from residents. So they've seen a little uptick in application from residents participating in that program as well. So since January, we have seen over 6 tons of food waste at our transfer station that has been redirected from the waste stream that would be going to Crapo Hill, and now it's being brought to a compost facility. So again, props to the residents taking on this program and making it successful.
So Tim, if it's 6 tons in the first quarter, that's 24 tons a year.
Correct.
That's a real number.
Definitely a real number. Huge.
Yeah, we talked earlier about putting some stormwater information on DCTV. I think the success statement about the food waste would be a good idea too.
Sure.
Along with the availability of the containers to be
Yeah.
picked up at the administration building. I see them there and they still got some.
Yeah, we still have some containers in stock, free containers, which include a countertop bin for your daily food waste, and then a storage bin which is a Home Depot bucket with a gasketed screw on top, that can be stored, elsewhere, shed or garage, until you can take it to the transfer station to dump it. It's great, and there's a flyer in there, also some instructions on what you can put in there to compost and what you cannot. So it's basically food waste. You don't want any packaging or anything like that in there. So but it can be anything: bones, meats, veggies, everything. And it's been successful.
How about restaurants in Dartmouth?
So restaurants, I think that the state had implemented a ban on food waste through restaurants.
Yeah.
So, but to get
How is that? Is that a commercial collection?
that is commercial collection, and I do, having worked in restaurants, I see that difficult unless you have the facilities to be able to separate, food waste within the restaurant, because most of it goes in the waste basket. A busy restaurant at times, and you're clearing tables and disposing of waste. That really has to be enforced within the restaurants to be able to be successful. So we don't have the numbers or anything on that, but that would be a great feat, and that would be a huge tonnage. I can say.
So if we had a Dartmouth resident who owned and operated several high visibility restaurants in town, they might take a leadership role and help develop some kind of an outreach for other restaurants.
Absolutely, that's a possibility.
Okay.
All right. So, anything more on that, on food waste?
No.
Right, I'll move on to vacancies. We still have about 16 vacancies. We've hired a couple of HMEOs, so we're only down to about 4 now. I think we were originally down 11 to 9 to 7. We brought it down to 4, and we will continue to interview applicants. We still short 2 SMEOs, which are machine operators. We did have 1 application and interview, and that haven't taken the position yet. So we'll keep working on that. We've been interviewing for the admin assistant, and hopefully we'll have a decision on that by the end of this week. We did have applications and interviews for the superintendent of water and sewer, and we're hoping to move forward on that as well. And water and sewer billing clerk, we're working on trying to get the second clerk over from the town hall union with an MOA into the DPW union, so we can move forward and fill that. And our water and sewer billing clerk over at the water department has left the town, and we're working on interviews for that position as well. The associate engineering position as well, we've hired 1 associate engineer. We're in the works of hiring another engineer, and we just received an application from actually a graduate from UMass Dartmouth, so in the engineering department. So I'm looking forward to reaching out to that applicant and setting up an interview.
Any word on, a new, personnel director?
New personnel director has been hired. I believe she's starting sometime in June.
Okay. Board members, any questions, any issues?
Oh,
All right, I have, some issues for future meetings, Tim.
Sure.
And I mentioned these, and if any board members have any comments, I'd be happy to hear them. After I had a tour of the landfill, and one of the issues that came up, and this has come up in a couple of other discussions, is in the event of a major disaster, and for the purpose of discussion, let's say hurricane, there'd be a lot of debris, and there is a risk that a single disaster could fill the landfill. I mean, I know I'm overstating that by a little bit, but not by much. And I think considering how debris is handled, I don't know, Tim, do we have specific areas that have been designated for temporary disposal of disaster debris so that it can be worked and sorted and appropriate disposal done of it rather than just ship it all to the landfill?
Yeah, in town, the only facility currently, would be our highway facility and transfer station, which is
Yeah.
where we sort materials.
Yeah, my impression is that that would be wholly inadequate, given some of the debris streams that we may see, buildings and trees especially.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a worthwhile exercise to consider some open spaces in the town, say 2 or 3 spread throughout the town that could be used, both to minimize haul and speed the initial process up, but also to allow some sorting of debris so it gets disposed of efficiently.
Absolutely, and we've discussed this with the district, and I sat down and discussed this with Mr. Gagne a little bit, and we're looking at taking some mapping and looking at some areas in town that would be appropriate and feasible.
All right. Okay, so I think at some point in the future, perhaps July, we could bring this back and have an idea of how this could be done. Maybe from a process standpoint, you could bring it back sooner. What departments, what kind of efforts, what are we looking at? How many acres? What would be the, for want of a better word, planning areas? That is to say, we don't want to necessarily identify specific sites up front because that may become the focus of the discussion rather than how do we do it, and generally speaking, where should these areas be?
Yeah, you'll definitely need, Board of Health and Conservation to weigh in on
Right.
some of these sites, and definitely.
All right. All right, second item I'd like to get onto the agenda is posting of speed limits in some neighborhoods. From my own experience, I think it would be good to have additional posting on Elm Street. And I think given the unfortunate accidents we've had on the bridge and in Hayden Aram, thinking a little bit about whether Hayden Aram in particular ought to have an explicit speed limit posted. I know that involves the town safety officer, but I think from my perspective, it wouldn't bother me to see a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit on Elm Street and a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit posted and enforced in Paydnarum, particularly as you come off the bridge. So if you could give us an idea of how that would work, I'd appreciate it, and I'd like to at least move forward with a consideration of those two areas and perhaps some others.
Yeah, so we can, we could also bring in traffic safety, to present to the board as well. You also have to follow state regulations and, MUTCD, for any proposed signage and, especially speed limit signage. And sometimes, any speed limit, revisions would require a full study.
Yeah, as I've driven around other towns, particularly towns with challenging sight lines, I see a difference between rectangular white speed limit signs and other signs implying a speed limit that are yellow and
Yeah,
have a
those are,
different shape.
those are considered advisory signs, not
Yeah,
enforceable,
yeah.
but they are advisory for the, average driver. Yeah.
So I think given the nature of some of our streets, advisory signs as quickly as possible might be a good idea while we actually look at enforceable speed limits.
Absolutely.
And part of this, I think, is a rise in distracted driving.
Yeah.
But also,
I think a large part, yeah.
yeah, right. But again, we had an accident in Paydnarum, and I don't want to see any more. It's very tight in there. Some people just don't slow down. So,
Yeah,
all right.
and through traffic safety, they've investigated that. So I'd let them discuss that if they may.
All right. And then, Tim, I'd like to have you come back and explain to us how waivers are given for the drinking water protection bylaw. I'm concerned that there's an incremental loss of the protection area that's happening, and I'd like to talk a little bit about how we might stay on top of that a little bit better.
So you're talking about the aquifer protection?
Yeah.
overlay? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Who would hand out a waiver?
Zoning Board of Appeals.
And the question is, on what basis, and do they bother telling us ahead of time?
Mhm. Yeah, so that's a zoning bylaw, so it would be the zoning board.
But I think in order for them to make findings, for any approvals, I believe we would want to have some input on waivers for drinking
Really?
water protection.
Most of the time we are given, comment. So we're given a chance to comment on any projects that are requesting a waiver. As long as they're requesting through the Zoning Board of Appeals, we're given that comment. If it's waived by another department, then we're typically not given a chance to comment.
Yeah, I don't see how another department could waive that requirement, but I presume, Tim, the town is having a discussion about the overall planning process and how to track projects so things don't fall through the cracks. Is that right?
Yeah, and continuing on the online permitting program as
Yeah.
well.
Right. All right, board members, any other issues? All right, we just sat through a 3-hour meeting. I'd like to try and find ways to expedite projects, recognizing sometimes the discussions get pretty long, and often that's my fault. I get it, but Tim, if you could think a little bit about providing us summaries ahead of some of these items, so we know exactly what we're going to focus on and what kind of approvals are you're asking us to make. I think that would
Sometimes-
be one step.
Sometimes when agendas tend to get lengthy, there's always the opportunity to schedule meetings more often. So rather than once a month, you may be able to have twice a month if you have a lot of items that month to take care of those in a short period of time.
Hi, Tim.
Um,
Speaking of that, did you want to bring up the next meeting a
Yeah.
little earlier?
Date of the next meeting.
Before that, I actually had one more thing. I just wanted to mention, town meeting is scheduled for June 3rd. So that's Tuesday, June 3rd at 9 a.m.
Yeah, and I will be there as part of the capital projects planning.
All right,
You said 9 a.m.?
9 a.m.
And that's at the high school, right, Tim?
Yes,
I'll be going in the afternoon, but I have a doctor's appointment in the morning.
all right.
Right, so
Next meeting, so we had a couple items that we were trying to work on, specifically annual bids. So our annual bid for highway water, wastewater, and looking at trying to get those out and signed by July 1st. We're hoping to maybe meet on June 5th, Thursday, June 5th, to get those approved, and then our bidding aid can work on sending those out for a signature. Is anybody not available on the 5th, Thursday the 5th at 7:30?
You said June the 5th?
June 5th, yep.
I'm
That'd be
fine.
Thursday, June 5th.
Yep, it's okay.
I'm good.
All right, so we'll schedule that. We'll get an agenda the week before.
right, any other issues, Tim?
Not this time?
All right. Thank you all for your patience and hanging in there. And I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. LaBelle. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Gagne. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Gagne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you all.